Broadcasting live and worldwide. Here's Brody Brazil.
So for the sake of this podcast and this YouTube video, I'm going to need you to absolutely clear your mind of the last 9 to 10 years in Bay Area sports. I understand that's a weird request. It's an odd way to begin this program, but I'm going to let the music fade out here. I'm going to give you a second to do that. I need you to mentally go back to the spring of 2010 and think about the NBA's Warriors and think about baseball's Giants. Golden State was finishing off a 26-win season. There was nothing really exciting about the Warriors in 2010. 26 wins out of 82 games. That means they lost 56 times, right? Not a lot of attention going on around there. This is well before the years of them winning 3 titles in 4 years, but you can't remember any of that stuff. I need you to wipe all that stuff away. Take your mind mentally to where the Warriors were back in 2010 at this time. Also think about the Giants. Now, they were coming off a decent 2009 season, but they still finished 3rd in the NL West in 2009. Who knew what was to come in 2010, 12, and 14? Again, though, I cannot have you remembering that. I need you to wipe that away for a second. You'll see why, as I explain. Think about both those franchises back in 2010. They had all the right tools. They were large market teams. They had fan bases with potential to really expand and explode in popularity. Quite honestly, they could each be darlings of the region. All they had to do was win it all. And they did. But who does that sound like? To me, it sounds a lot like the San Jose Sharks. It's a team that always spends up to the cap, always acquires new and interesting players, always makes it very competitive, their stature in the National Hockey League. They don't have very many off years where you count them out. They feel interesting and entertaining pretty much on an annual basis. Quite honestly, they've always been as popular, I think, as nearly possible without winning it all. But that brings me to this question. What if they did win it all? How would life be different? So that's the purpose of this video. Everybody knows they want the Sharks to win a Stanley Cup. You do because you spend money on season tickets and apparel and jerseys. And you go to games, you spend your time watching them on television or listening on the radio or, like I said, in person. I want them to win too. I've been a broadcaster now with them and the network for 10 years. And I've been following them since the early 90s. The first year at SAP Center was the one where I really got interested in the NHL, in hockey, and specifically the Sharks. That was 1993. I hope we all find out what life is like after a Stanley Cup in the next couple weeks and months. But I'm not sure any of us truly know what it would be like. I've got 4 things I think would be different or noticeable about winning a Stanley Cup and life after that. And I'll quickly touch on them here. I'll break them out into detail in just a second. The 4 things I think would be different are, number 1, immediate attention. I think that would be quite different for the Sharks if they won a cup. Individual recognition, that's number 2. Collective legacy, that's my number 3. And the 4th thing I think would be different is growth of the game locally in Northern California. So like I said, I'll break down all of those 4 things in just a second. But first, I want you to hear what my colleagues said in their response to that very same question. Dan Rusanowsky has been the radio play-by-play guy since year 1 and game 1 for San Jose. Jamie Baker was one of the earliest Shark players. And Randy Hahn, I'm not sure everybody knows this, was one of the grassroots leaders to even bring professional hockey into San Jose. Of course, nowadays you do know him as the television play-by-play voice. But I want to begin with Hahner, and I asked him and everybody the question, what do you think life would be like after the Sharks win a cup? How would life change? How would things be different in San Jose?
It's always been my belief that the overall Bay Area interest in the Sharks won't really explode until they win a Stanley Cup. Of course, we know they got to a Stanley Cup, and there was heightened interest a few years ago when they lost to Pittsburgh. But I really think that if the Bay Area had a hockey champion, a hockey parade, the Stanley Cup making its way all the way through the South Bay, through San Francisco, the North Bay. You'd have the fans in places like Marin. You'd have the fans in places like Napa, in the East Bay, that know about the Sharks, might casually follow the Sharks, that would all of a sudden get to know the Sharks and be invested in the Sharks. I think it's the one game changer that would put hockey finally over the top in the overall Bay Area sports consciousness.
A lot changes. The first thing that happens is that San Jose has a championship trophy to hang its hat on, and it'll be an amazing event for the city itself and for the South Bay in general, but also really for the Bay Area, for all of the fans who put all of their investment into the team. It'll be a tremendous opportunity for the Sharks to grow the game in other parts of the Bay Area outside of the South Bay, and I think that it'll draw a lot of attention to the community as well.
Joe Thornton, who's already going to be in the Hall of Fame, goes down as one of the greatest players of all time. Doug Wilson will establish himself as one of the greatest GMs of all time. I mean, his track record is amazing. There's only one thing. It's not a blemish. There's just one thing missing. But more importantly, this fan base get to follow the cup, maybe drink out of the cup, watch the players celebrate at A's games, Giants games, wherever. And so many people, if they come near that trophy, if they're a mediocre hockey fan, they'll become more of one. If they're not a hockey fan, they'll become a mediocre one. That trophy is religion. It's amazing. And it changes lives. Like, people cry over it, like literally bawl. So if the Sharks win the Stanley Cup, as much as big it is for a few individuals, I think it'd be amazing for this fan base. And I think for all the work that's put in over the years, it all comes to fruition. And it'll be one heck of a parade and party.
I really do want to thank the guys for all their insightful thoughts and commentary in answering that question. And I apologize in advance if I duplicate anything here, because I think a lot of us are on the same page in seeing what life might be like after a Stanley Cup win. But let me expand on my points here. Number one, I talked about immediate attention. It's a crowded landscape as far as Bay Area sports are concerned for the fan. I mean, attention-wise, there's 2 NFL teams, 2 Big League Baseball teams. The Warriors seem to be a story even on days they're not playing right now, and obviously that comes with winning 3 titles in 4 years. And that's not to mention Cal, Stanford, and a couple other major college sports programs. So if you're the Sharks and you win the Stanley Cup, I mean, doesn't that propel you to being kind of like the topic of conversation all summer long leading into the next season? Like, if San Jose raises Lord Stanley in mid-June, what do you think people are going to be talking about the rest of June, all of July, August, and September, right into the next season opener? It puts you at the forefront, I think, of conversation. They are important after that. Not that they're not important now, but they're seen as much more important after that. It's going to help business. It's going to help the game here locally. Also, think about this. The team will do better financially. All that Stanley Cup champion merchandise, gear, hats, shirts. You know you want one. I want to wear one of those too, quite proudly, around town. And then for you, the fan, I mean, think about this. Immediate attention. Everybody's going to be talking about the parade that you get to have. And I don't know the exact route. I think I have an idea of where it might start and finish. We've all daydreamed about that. But everybody gets to have that lifetime experience of the parade. And that's part of the immediate attention I'm talking about here. All the spotlight goes on the Sharks in a different light than they've ever seen before. Not to mention this, lastly, the Stanley Cup. It will go across North America and Europe with the players. They each get their day with Lord Stanley. And certainly we will have so much fun following the journeys of the Cup with all the different individual players all summer long. So that's immediate attention. But how about individual recognitions? That's my number 2. Think about Joe Thornton. He's already a Hall of Famer. He's already a legend. He's already a beauty. But now he's a Stanley Cup winning Hall of Famer, a Stanley Cup winning legend, and a Stanley Cup winning beauty. It just fits a lot better, right? It's weight off his shoulders. Doug Wilson. I mean, he has been grinding the last several years to put this team together. And what can you say? As of late, He's been doing some of his best work, locking down key players and bringing in new important players like Evander Kane in the last 14 months and Erik Karlsson to start the beginning of this season. He would have to be viewed, if he's not already, as one of the game's elite general managers. It would just be perfect timing for him to make these big moves and then immediately be rewarded for it. It's individual recognition. And then lastly, nobody has talked about this for an individual standpoint. Pete DeBoer, he's their head coach. He's been to 2 Stanley Cup finals, and he's been on the losing side of both of them. One with New Jersey and one with San Jose. Wouldn't it be fun if that third time was a charm? And there's lots of other stories too, individually. Don't get me wrong. I've just selected those 3. Jumbo, Doug Wilson, and head coach DeBoer as the 3 that I could focus on. Like I said, there's about 40 other individual stories, but we'll stick with those 3 for right now. Number 3, collective recognition. You know, a lot of the 2010s, I feel like, as the Sharks have qualified for the playoffs quite a bit and made deep runs to the Western Conference Final, to the Stanley Cup Final, but just never had that ultimate run of success to go all the way and get the cup. I feel in a certain way like the fan base recognizes all these years of playoff experience as a bit of a struggle because it never resulted in what you ultimately wanted. But think about how the 2010s and all the playoff games and series, how they'd be viewed differently if the Sharks were to get a Stanley Cup here soon. All those years of maybe somewhat frustration would be looked at as ramping up to the ultimate goal which eventually happened. You will think of them so much more fondly if this does result in what you want in the near future. Ever thought about that before? I hadn't until I was trying to consider what to put in this video. And then not to mention, too, as it goes with collective recognition, not to forget, I should say, mentioning this, the Sharks would have reunion nights over the years, and well after the time that Joe Thornton retires and eventually when Joe Pavelski retires. I'm talking 20, 25 years down the road from right now. Logan Couture, Vlasic, Burns, they're all coming to Sharks Stanley Cup title reunion night. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if they have a night like that or if it's as special 20 years down the road if the Sharks don't win a Stanley Cup. The last point I want to make here is number 4, the growth of the game. Winning a cup, like I said before, it comes with living it up. For a couple weeks, for a couple months, really the next entire regular season, that Stanley Cup win is celebrated. And don't you think when impressionable young kids see the Sharks raising the Stanley Cup, what are they going to think about all summer? Who are they going to imitate all summer into the next fall, into the next winter? Who are they going to want to be like? Will some new players arise? Will some new hockey players come around because all of a sudden they saw what the Sharks did and now they want to be part of this too? Absolutely. Will more people learn to skate? Will more people get deeper into the game of hockey? I truly believe, yes, they will. And you're not going to notice that immediately because I believe that it'll happen at the younger levels first, but think about that payoff in another 15, 20 years down the road. Kind of like how winning cities of Super Bowls have Super Bowl babies, like 9 months after that winning day. I'm not going that far, and maybe I'm building a suggestion here on the fly that I didn't think about and probably shouldn't have mentioned, but you understand what I'm saying here. You're going to have a product of new hockey players specifically because they got all excited about the Sharks winning the Stanley Cup. They're now interested in the sport of hockey and they want to be involved. So those are my 4 things that I think would be much different for San Jose if and when they win the cup. Immediate attention, individual recognitions, collective recognition, and growth of the game. Actually, collective legacy. I like that one better instead of recognition because I think the legacy will be strong in San Jose. Yes, we all want the Sharks to win a cup. I'll leave it with this. But I don't think any of us have any idea what life would be like. We know we want it. We know we want to get there. But none of us know just how sweet it would be. That does it for this YouTube video and this podcast. I really appreciate you listening and watching. Maybe subscribe to the channel or also the podcast if you're enjoying this content. Also check me out on Twitter, especially during baseball and hockey games. I'm very active there, as well as on Instagram. I've been trying real hard to crank out the best content I can on a regular basis. That does it for this episode and this time. Until the next time around, I'm Brody Brazil, and yes, that is my real name.